Hello, everybody. This is James McDaniels, and I welcome you to the NBA and NASCAR Power Half Hour. I am your host, and we have got another great show on tap for you guys today. First off, I want to say I am really sorry I was not able to get my show in on Sunday or yesterday. I've been really busy working on my Eagle project, and it's been really tiring. So now that I finally have the time to do it this afternoon, I am doing it. So that's why I'm 2 days late on this week's show. We've got a lot of news coming up in today's broadcast. Not so much NASCAR as there usually is at the beginning of the show, because there was no NASCAR this week. I'm presuming it was because of the Easter Sunday, and therefore there's usually no NASCAR on big holidays like that. So there was no NASCAR this week, but there was some NASCAR news involving Denny Hamlin. If you remember, last week Denny Hamlin was in that big wreck on the last lap at the Auto Club Speedway race. So I'll talk about that news. And then there's a lot of news in basketball, both in the NBA and in March Madness. So we'll talk about all of that news, bring them basically break down going to the Final Four now. We'll break down, how the Heat are doing, and if you hadn't heard, their big old win streak that they had finally got destroyed. Their win streak is no more. They were so close to breaking the record, but they could not continue on. I'll tell you about the team that beat them and basically go over what the rest of the season has for them. So I'll talk about NBA and NCAA basketball. Next week, I will have Robert Dieters as a guest at the beginning of my show. So can't wait to hear his opinions on the upcoming NBA playoffs and the like. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is Denny Hamlin. Now, Denny Hamlin is he's had a very tough time this season, even though there hasn't been much going on so far this season. It has started off rough for him because he at the last race, not only did he wreck on the last lap and cause him to finish in a very bad position, but also what happened was it was very sad to hear that Denny Hamlin, he has a fracture in his back. In fact, it's a fractured vertebrae to be exact in his lower back. So he's actually said to be out between 5 and 6 races. So as for who's going to take over for his car, it was said that Mark Martin would take over Denny Hamlin's position for the next 6 races. But apparently a deal broke apart according to USA Today, and now Mark Martin will drive Denny Hamlin's car only at the next race, which is at Martinsville on Sunday. Of course, Martinsville is one of those short tracks. It's like the shortest track in NASCAR, called the Paperclip. So it ought to be a lot of fun to see what will happen this weekend. Of course, Denny Hamlin's actually had pretty good runs at Martinsville, so I think it's going to be a good thing for drivers that have had a hard time, that are good at that track, but just haven't been able to get wins and such, because now Denny Hamlin's not going to be there. So we'll see what happens with it, and we'll end up seeing, who's going to be driving Hamlin's car, now that we know that Mark Martin's only going to be driving it for the next race, which is Martinsville. So that is the update on Denny Hamlin, who, of course, as we all remember from from last week at the Auto Club race, he was actually transported by helicopter, or airlifted, I should say, to the nearest hospital. It was that bad, and luckily it's only a fractured back. But again, now Denny Hamlin's going to be out 6 weeks or so, about 5 or 6 races, and Mark Martin will drive his car at Martinsville. But as for the other races, that is remained to be seen. So that is the update in the NASCAR world. Now let's head over to another great sport, basketball. We have got lots of news from all over the place. Since I have a lot of March Madness news, I'm going to start off with the NBA. because it's a little bit quicker, of course. Um, as for the standings where they are right now, we've already got 6 teams in the East, and we have 5 teams in the West that have already clinched their spots. So in the East, here are their respective order right now between first and sixth ranked, which, like I just said, they've already clinched their spots. So Miami is first, Indiana is second, New York is third, Brooklyn is fourth, Atlanta is fifth, and Chicago is sixth. Okay, and now the Western Conference also, like I said, has 5 teams that have already clinched their spots, and those teams would be in order from their rank from first to fifth is the San Antonio Spurs, Oklahoma City, Denver, the Los Angeles Clippers, i.e., not the Lakers, for that's a bit unusual, and then number 5 ranked Memphis. Now, why I say unusual for the LA Clippers is because number one, you usually never see the LA Clippers in the playoffs, but I think it's different this year because obviously we know how good LA is this year in terms of their Clippers team. So it's not a big surprise to me that they're in the conference, like that they're going to be in the playoffs in the Western Conference. But it's just like still a surprise though because they're like a team that's like never in there. As for the team that's usually in there from LA, the LA Lakers, at this very moment they are out of the playoffs. Yep. They are out of the playoffs, but when I talk about this and when we're talking about the Lakers and stuff, I mean every week it seems to be different. Like I think on my last show, the Lakers were in eighth place at the time in the playoffs. Now they're out, and I think the week before that the Lakers were out. So it keeps going back and forth between out and in every week. Only, I mean, when it comes down to it, until we are done with 82 games for all these teams, will we seriously know whether the Lakers are going to be in the playoffs this year? And of course, that's something that us NBA fans are so used to seeing. I mean, the Lakers not being in the playoffs is basically like seeing a unicorn in real life. I mean, you don't ever see it. The Lakers are always in the playoffs every year, and this year might be one of those years that they may not do it. And you got to remember, they have some. They were building an all-star team. They had Kobe Bryant. They had Pau Gasol, their usuals, but then they added Dwight Howard. They added Steve Nash. We all thought they were going to be one of the most dominant teams. And look at them. They're barely hanging on to their playoff hopes right now. Of course, they're only half a game back at this point, but still, I mean, usually if you're a Lakers fan at this point in the season, the Lakers would have already clinched their spot, and right now the Lakers are half a game out from being not in the playoffs. So without instead of talking about the Lakers going on and on about them, how about we talk about how the rest of the playoffs is shaping up? As for the teams that in each conference that are not playoff eligible at this point in time, they've been eliminated from contention. Mathematically, in the Eastern Conference, the teams that have been eliminated from playoff contention are Toronto, Detroit, Cleveland, Orlando, and not surprisingly, Charlotte. And on the in the Western Conference, the the 4 teams that have already been eliminated from playoff contention are Phoenix, New Orleans, my favorite team, Sacramento, and Minnesota. They are out. So the only teams that there's really not much of a race now in terms of the Eastern Conference. It's pretty much, in my opinion, almost already clinched up because right now you've got the top 6 that have already clinched in the East, and the only 2 teams that are right now in 7th and 8th that have not clinched their spots yet are the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks. And Philadelphia, they're 6 games back right now of Milwaukee. So in all honesty, since Chicago is only a few games ahead of Milwaukee, I think it will only be a matter of a few more days, and Milwaukee and Boston will seal their spots in the East. I don't think Philadelphia or Washington is going to make a big, ginormous, miraculous comeback and make it somehow into the playoffs. I don't see that happening. So for me personally, I think the East is already settled out. Of course, mathematically, it's not done yet, but by the looks of the odds are really in the favor of Boston and Milwaukee at this point to clinch those final 2 spots. West is a completely different story. I mean Memphis and all the other teams above Memphis, so the Clippers and Denver and the Oklahoma City Thunder and San Antonio Spurs, they're all way ahead of the field. They have a ton of wins over the next spot, 6th position, which is Golden State. In fact, Memphis actually has an 8-game advantage over Golden State at this point. That shows you just how dominant those 5 teams are compared to the other 3 teams that are just trying to make the playoffs. Golden State, their position right now, it looks all right. Of course, it could be better. But I think with the way Golden State's been playing this year, I think they'll be able to finish it out and get into the playoffs. Houston, all I can say is as long as they stay ahead of Utah, I think they're good to go. But definitely they are still in danger zone. If they mess up even 2 or 3 games out of these last 10 or so, they're going to maybe be screwed when it comes down to it, because the Lakers and Utah are right there for the taking for those last spots. And Dallas at this point is actually looking pretty good. They're only a game and a half back of the Lakers and 2 games back of the Utah Jazz at this point. So honestly, Dallas still has a really realistic opportunity of seizing that 8th and final seed, or even the 7th seed if Houston really shuts down this last week or so of the NBA season. So as it stands right now, Golden State 13 games back of the San Antonio Spurs and way back of Memphis in the 6th spot, are only a game ahead of Houston, which is the 7th seed. Utah is the 8th and final seed in the playoffs, and then the Lakers are half a game back, and Dallas is 2 games back, and Portland's all the way back about 5.5 games. So Portland, for the most part, has almost been eliminated at this point, but unless a miracle happens, they could possibly be in the playoffs. But realistically, Portland, I think, is out of it. Dallas, Lakers, Utah, watch their games. This is going to be a really fun last week in the NBA, and I'm really super psyched about how this is going to finish, whether Utah will claim the 8th spot, whether Dallas will make a miraculous comeback and beat the Lakers and Utah and get that 8th seed. I mean, it'll be very fun to see where things go, so that will be quite entertaining, and this is where basketball gets good, is when you can see just how competitive it gets on these final few games of the season when you're that close to making the NBA playoffs. So I'm basically through 13 minutes on my show here, so that's actually great timing. It gives me a lot of time to talk about college basketball at this point. There is another NBA story I will go back to involving the Sacramento Kings Seattle saga at the end of it, but it's pretty short for today, so I'll save it till the very last bit. So let's go to college basketball. And I was actually, I can't remember when it was. I think it might have been on Friday or Sunday. I can't remember when it was. Anyway, I was over at Dave & Buster's when and about an hour away when the Elite 8 games were going on, or Elite 8 or Sweet 16. I cannot remember, but point is Michigan and Kansas were battling it out in whatever game that they were playing. And I remember watching that game, and with 30 seconds left, I thought it was all over. I thought Michigan was going to lose to Kansas. I seriously cannot make it so clear that game was probably one of the craziest games of this NCAA tournament in terms of the ones that I've been able to see, because I haven't been able to see that many. I mean, and not even 30 seconds. I mean, even on ESPN here, the guy writes 21 seconds left, and they were down by 5. And then this guy, this Trey Burke guy, I remember in the last minute, he made this 3, and I swear the thing was about 35 feet from the basket. It was one really long shot. When he shot that thing, I doubted that thing was even going to be close to going in. And what do you know what? He just swishes the thing. It amazed me just how far that guy can shoot. I mean, I can shoot threes from 24, 25 feet, probably at the most. I usually do pretty well between 22 and 23 feet. But are you kidding me? The guy was halfway between the 3-point line and half court. it was nuts. It was like a Jimmer Fredette shot it was what I was telling people. I'm like, dude, that was like a Jimmer Fredette shot, because Jimmer Fredette's one of those guys that can absolutely crush it in terms of, make the basket from really, really far out. But I'm telling you, that play really changed things around, and how things just came together. I mean, it just amazed me. Michigan sent Kansas and the game into overtime, and when we all thought it was over for Michigan in regular, they tied it up, and then in overtime, they were able to beat Kansas, pull a huge upset. In my opinion, Michigan pulled one of the greatest upsets I think I've ever seen, not because that Kansas was first ranked and Michigan was fourth ranked, but personally because that was one of the wildest March Madness games I had ever seen. Now, I don't watch that much March Madness, but when I get a chance to, I will. And because of that, when there's not much that I've seen, actually in real time, and that was one that I did see in real time, and to me that was a really big upset and a big win for that team. I mean, it was nuts. So Michigan, they went on to beat Florida, by the way, in their next game, and I'm telling, okay, now I remember the night. It was the Sweet 16, because Florida and Florida Gulf Coast University were also playing that night, and I know that Florida Gulf Coast University did not win that game against Florida, and therefore they're out, and I knew that they didn't advance any farther than the Sweet 16. So that was the Sweet 16 game, was between Michigan and Kansas. Now, as for the next game Michigan played, Michigan actually beat Florida and are now in the Final Four among three others for the NCAA men's tournament. It should be a lot of fun to see what's going to happen in this final few games. I mean, there's a lot of passion that's going to be played. I really would keep an eye on this Trey Burke guy. He's absolutely insane. He just caught fire. He scored 23 points in that game against Kansas in the second half. He was drop dead, just goose-egged from a points perspective in the first half. But in the second half, absolutely came alive with that 23 points and just made a lot of crucial shots. Some of them absolutely making me go, oh my goodness, is this actually happening? I mean, that guy, based on this, just on that performance, and if he can perform as good as that in all these other games, I'm telling you, he's going to be picked up by an NBA team, and when he gets in the NBA, he's going to be something like a Brandon Jennings or a Tyreke Evans, or just somebody that's going to be absolutely crazy if that's the way he can play. I mean, he'll be like a Jimmer Fredette, Brandon Jennings, and Tyreke Evans combined, all into one. I mean, he's got that capability just off seeing him that one game. Of course, I haven't seen him all the other games, so in terms of me judging him on that one game, it's not fair, but just based on the one performance that I saw from him, he definitely won me over as a player. As for the other teams, let me get the bracket up here. I'm using USA Today's bracket. So the three other teams that are joining Michigan in the Final Four in Atlanta, it will be Louisville, who beat over Duke. I'll have an update on Kevin Ware in just a second here, as soon as I'm done talking about this. The bracketology here. Wichita State pulled in a massive upset against Ohio State, and Wichita State, a ninth-ranked team, is going to the Final Four, if you can believe that. Syracuse, they beat out Marquette. I mean, just looking at this score, it's kind of ridiculous. Marquette was held to 39 points. 39 points. That is a really, really low score for a very good basketball team like Marquette. So Syracuse, you know that defense had to be very good. And then, of course, Michigan beat Florida. So now, basically, put it all down. It's Louisville, Wichita State, Syracuse, and Michigan that are all in the Final Four in Atlanta. It should be a blast. Will Wichita State just make a huge upset, beat the rest of these guys, and win the biggest, NCAA men's basketball tourney there is? Or will Louisville or Michigan or Syracuse make something big of themselves and win the NCAA tournament? who knows what will happen? But what we do know for now is Louisville, Wichita State, Syracuse, and Michigan have booked their tickets to Atlanta for the Final Four tourney, and one of those teams will be your next NCAA men's basketball champion. Now, let's go over to Louisville, and Louisville made the news this week in their game against Duke in their matchup there in the Elite Eight. That game, Louisville beat Duke in that game by a staggering 22 points, 85-63. And Duke was 2 ranked, Louisville was 1 ranked, so you'd think the game would have been a little bit closer. Not even close. But the bigger story for Louisville had to have been their player Kevin Ware, right? He's one of these big players on Louisville. He means a lot to the team, and I remember watching the video of this. It is kind of disturbing in a way if you're kind of a younger or sensitive viewer. So good thing we're on radio here, or else I'd probably show it. Maybe up to the point of which it actually breaks. But what happened is Kevin Ware, he was just doing a regular play. He jumped up high, tried to do a block, but he came down on his leg in what seemed to be a regular fashion, but he did it with such a force of some kind, and he just did it just wrong to where the leg, it basically, the lower leg shattered in half. The lower leg shattered in half, basically what happened, and I saw a scientific video on this, but I can't remember what the specific names of the bones or muscles or whatever they were, but what happened was that the bone actually came out of his leg. It was so gross. I remember watching the play on YouTube for the first time, and the first thing I noticed about that play when the guy came down was the bench. The bench reaction was you could just tell things were really, really bad because everybody on the bench was really, really, not wanting to look. They were looking away. And the Duke team, they realized the thing, and they weren't happy about it. All the Louisville players, in fact, some of the Louisville players were even crying out of what was happening. I mean, it was gross. I saw a picture of it. I saw a picture of it later, like a close-up picture, and it was gross. But on the TV, I don't know why they blur it out because you can't see the bone come out on TV. But for some reason, they do it. But it's what the guy said when his leg was out. I mean, when somebody's leg is shattered like that with such a force and anything else like that, I mean, the last thing you would think about is your team winning the basketball game. But this Kevin Ware guy, he had such a passion for his team and how big stuff was on the line and the loyalty of his teammates that he basically just told them. He said it over and over and over again. He basically said to them, just forget about me. I'll be fine. You go out there and win this game. You go out there and win this game. And people were saying he said it like 10 times or something. And this guy, all he cared about was his team, forgetting about him and telling them to win the game. He loved that they cared, but he said it's more important that you learn how to win the game. I've actually got a video on here right now that's on silent that's showing what happened. So basically, when he came down on his leg, he came down with 1,700 to 2,500 pounds of force. Basically, what happened is something happened with his fibula and tibia, and then that caused his bone to come out of his body. And you can see on the video, if you watch it, he was grimacing in pain. But just the fact that this guy told his team, go out there, win this game. I know you care about me, but just go out there and win this game. It's important that we win this game. It just shows what kind of an attitude he's got. He's got a never-quit attitude. He had surgery, and then today he was already walking. He was already walking in his cast. Of course, he needed a little bit of help, but this guy, he's very resilient, and you know what? I cannot wait for him to be. He'll probably be another good player like that Trey guy. We'll have to see how well he comes back from his injury, but as resilient and as calm and so empowering he is when he's talking about basketball, I don't think there's any question about it. That guy is going to make one great player, and if he already is, that's great, but he'll be even better when he comes back from this injury. I mean, he even said himself that this is just a minor setback to what will be a major comeback. So, just considering that, I really hope the best for Louisville Kevin Ware. He's got great things going for him, and I really can't wait to see what he'll do the minute that he finishes up this injury of his and it heals, and then he can come back and play on the court, and I guarantee you he will be in the NBA. And for the Louisville team themselves, I love their attitude, how much loyalty they gave to Kevin Ware during this time. It was just great to see that team spirit, and that's what true sportsmanship is. Seeing that, being there for your player, supporting your player. If a player gets injured, being there for him, and even the other players on Duke feeling kind of sorry and sick about it. That got to feel very good. That's probably the best sportsmanship you're going to find, and I'm so glad that was able to show on TV when something horrible like that happened. So I wish the best for Kevin Ware. I'm very happy for Louisville. They deserve to be where they are. They play very well, even without Kevin Ware now. They're going to be one dangerous force to reckon with in this Final Four. And I just love the sportsmanship. That was probably the best thing that came out of this, the sportsmanship of both teams and the resiliency of Kevin Ware. And I can't wait to see him after he fully heals from his injury. So that does it for that. So we basically talked about Denny Hamlin and the Mark Martin situation, Louisville, the Michigan Wolverines, the Heat, the bracketology going down the Final Four, the NBA standings we've talked about. So with only a few minutes left to go here in the show, I want to finish off by basically reiterating that a big moment also in the NBA is going to be coming tomorrow, and then in the 18th and 19th of April. The NBA Board of Governors basically is going to meet tomorrow, all right? So this is tomorrow. The NBA Board of Governors is going to meet, and they're going to meet with both parties of the Sacramento-Seattle argument, I guess you could say. Well, not argument, but their bids to buy the Sacramento Kings. And if it's the Seattle bid, it's to move them to Seattle. If it's the Kings bid, if it's the Sacramento bid, it's to keep them in Sacramento. So that's a very big date coming up tomorrow. The NBA Board of Governors will hear from both bids, from both cities, and the people that are behind them. Mayor Kevin Johnson from Sacramento is going to be there, and I'm assuming that going to be representing, in addition to the already present, billionaires of Ballmer and stuff, if they show up. I heard that George Maloof, the main guy who did the deal with the Ballmer Group to hopefully send the team to Seattle in his mind, I also heard he was going to be there. So it's a very important day tomorrow to make a good bid and show the NBA that, the Kings could stay in Sacramento. And for Seattle fans, it's important that they show how big their market is and that why they deserve a team back after they lost their own team. And then, so that will be a big premise for what will happen on the 18th and 19th, where the final decision will come with whether the Kings will relocate or they will stay in Sacramento. So, huge month coming up for Kings fans. We're all just holding our breaths. And Seattle, they're holding their breaths. In all honesty, one of our cities is going to be happy, one of our cities is going to be sad. But you know what? If it came down to my opinion, I'd say the Kings stay in Sacramento. Not only because I'm a Kings fan, but also because I remember reading in a blog post about on like a Here We Stay or Sac Royalty website that also supports the Kings staying in Sacramento. It made a very good point to me that was unbiased, basically. And what it said is that Seattle, if they lose this agreement right now to sell the team to Seattle, this is not the last of the NBA in Seattle. The NBA will be back in Seattle because Seattle's a big market. They got a lot of people. They got an arena deal coming on. There will be another team that will seek to go there if they want to relocate or if the NBA eventually expands. But for the city of Sacramento, it is important that they keep the Kings, because if the Kings leave to Seattle, regardless of probably what happens anytime after that, regardless of an arena, regardless of how much support there will probably never be another NBA team in the city of Sacramento, ever. With Seattle, it's simply just another waiting point, and then they'll be able to seize their opportunity again once the time comes. But for the city of Sacramento, the arena is focused all around the Kings. With no Kings, there's no downtown arena. With no downtown arena, There's no I don't know how to explain it. There's no way to brighten up downtown, I guess you could say. They said like to revitalize downtown and make it a lot bigger, better, awesomer than what it currently is right now, and just totally make a huge economic impact. I mean, the Kings staying in Sacramento, it's far more important than just the game of basketball. It's huge, and I'm really happy to see the fan support. I mean, the fan support's been one of the best in the NBA, but I think a good argument for the city of Sacramento also, in addition to the attendance records, will also have to be the amount of Kings fans that have pledged season tickets for a new arena. There have been over 10,000. It's still climbing, and I think that will be a huge fan support aspect of the Kings' deal. Of course, there's the other financial agreements going along about selling the team and the arena deal going along, but that's all, in my opinion, I've looked at it. It seems perfectly fine. Seattle, wish the best for you, but I don't think you're going to be getting our NBA team. I mean, even Johnson said himself, he thinks based on everything that's happening and all the advantages Sacramento's got over Seattle and Seattle's advantages, he says, I think Sacramento's got a 90% chance of keeping this team. So those are pretty good odds. So we'll see what happens. April 3rd, tomorrow, is going to be a huge date for both fans of basketball in both cities. And then the final showdown will come the 18th and 19th when the Sacramento Kings' fate will ultimately just be decided on whether the Kings will stay in Sacramento or move to Seattle and become the Supersonics once again, as Seattle once had with their historic franchise, the Supersonics. And the Supersonics, actually, they did win a championship in 1979. But in all honesty, I don't think when you look at fan support and everything, I think it's going to come down to Sacramento. So, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So that's the update right now. Is that the Kings and Seattle, they will face off tomorrow and show their bids off to the NBA. And then mid-April, 18th and 19th, final fate will be decided. I will have more on that, of course, next week on next week's show. But for now, it is time to shut it down. So, without further ado, this has been the NBA and NASCAR Power Half Hour. I will see you next week after the Martinsville race. I'll talk about the NBA, where the playoffs are, because at that point we'll pretty much know for sure what team will be where, and basically what team will be in, what teams will be out in the playoffs in the NBA. We'll have all the news from Martinsville, the Martinsville race of next week. We'll have an update on Denny Hamlin if possible. Of course, we'll talk about March Madness. And of course, we'll have our very own Robert Theaters here next week also giving his take on the NBA playoffs and other related things. So for now, I'm signing off, and this has been James McDaniels in the NBA NASCAR Power Half Hour. And until next week, guys, I hope you have a good rest of the week.